At my husband's funeral, a phone I'd never seen began to ring from inside his suit pocket. It wasn't his usual one. The screen was black, cracked, no case, no brand. The church fell silent. The pastor paused mid-sentence. I remember the scent of lilies mixing with something else, burning plastic from the candles maybe, or grief itself. I reached in, my hand shaking. The phone buzzed again. The caller ID read one word: Carpenter. Everyone's eyes were on me as I stepped away from the casket. When I answered, a woman's voice, young, breathless, whispered, "Please, tell him I have the papers. Pastor said not to call today." And then she hung up. The phone went dead, but at that moment so did the version of my marriage I thought I knew. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Please like, subscribe, and stay till the end." Because what started as a farewell turned into a battle for the truth. My name is Marjorie Ellis. I was married to Daniel for 40 years. I thought I knew every corner of his life, every secret, every smile. But that ringing phone, it changed everything. The morning before the funeral, the house smelled like lemon polish and rain. Our daughter-in-law, Sarah, had been up since dawn cleaning the kitchen, while I ironed Daniel's best gray suit, the one he wore only for weddings and Sunday service. It felt wrong pressing it for his own goodbye. Outside, the rain tapped lightly on the window, a rhythm that used to make Daniel hum low under his breath when he read the paper. He wasn't a loud man. He filled the house not with noise but with presence, like a steady hum in the background, the kind you don't notice until it's gone. I remember the way he used to fix my teacup handle whenever it chipped. He'd stay up late gluing it perfectly, saying, "Can't have you drinking from something broken, Marge. That's bad luck." He said it with that half smile of his, the one that could melt away an argument faster than any apology. In the days leading to the funeral, people came and went. Old church friends brought casseroles. Neighbors left cards. Everyone said the same thing. He was a good man. He loved you more than life. And I believed them, because why wouldn't I? For 40 years, Daniel and I built our world brick by brick. A small house, 2 grown sons, a garden he loved more than I could ever understand. We had our share of storms, a miscarriage in our early years, money troubles when the factory closed. But we survived them all, holding each other through each night. Still, there were moments, tiny flickers, when I'd wake in the dark and hear him downstairs, talking softly on the phone. He'd say it was work, or a friend from church who couldn't sleep. And maybe it was, but something in his tone, the low urgency of it, would stir an unease I quickly buried. Because that's what wives do, isn't it? We choose peace over curiosity. On the morning of the funeral, my son Matthew helped button Daniel's cuffs. He looked so much like his father then. Strong, quiet, eyes that carried too much. "Mom, you sure you want him buried with the suit?" he asked gently. He loved that one. "Yes," I said. "It's how he'd want to go. Neat, proper." I didn't tell him I'd already placed something in Daniel's pocket, a folded note I'd written the night before, thanking him for 40 years of kindness, patience, and shared mornings. I thought it would rest with him forever, unseen. But fate had other plans. The church was full by noon. Soft organ music played as sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting blues and reds across the polished casket. I remember how I studied the light, trying not to think of the man inside it. When the pastor began his speech, I tried to listen. Truly, I did. But my mind kept drifting to the things Daniel left undone. The half-finished birdhouse on the porch, the checkbook he hadn't balanced since March, the locked drawer in his study I'd never asked about. It had been locked for years. He once told me it was just bills and receipts. I never pressed further. Sometimes love looks like trust, and sometimes it looks like silence. The first tear fell when the choir started Amazing Grace. I remember clutching the edge of my pew so tightly my knuckles turned white. Grief isn't one clean emotion. It's a storm of memories and regrets, and in that storm, you cling to anything that still feels solid. I thought about the last words he ever said to me. "Marge, don't go through the drawer if something happens to me." He had laughed when he said it, but his eyes didn't match his voice. I should have known. I should have seen the tremor behind the humor. But love blinds you, gently, beautifully, dangerously. When the pastor said, "May we remember Daniel Ellis as a man of faith," I nodded through tears. Because that's who he was to me, faithful, kind, honest. Or so I thought. Then the phone rang. It wasn't a polite ringtone. It was sharp, metallic, like something pulled from another world cutting through the hymn that had just begun. People turned, whispers rippled down the pews, and there it was, the sound coming from inside the casket. I froze. Matthew looked at me, confused. Sarah covered her mouth. The pastor hesitated mid-prayer, and then, without thinking, I walked up the aisle, my heels echoing against the marble floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. The sound grew louder, insistent, alive. I reached the casket, trembling, and that's when I saw the corner of something black peeking out from Daniel's suit jacket. My mind refused to understand. Not here, not now, but my hand reached anyway. When I lifted the phone, a hush fell over the entire room, and on the cracked screen, one single name glowed: Carpenter. That's when my heart began to race, not from grief, but from something darker, something I didn't yet have a name for. The phone never rang again that day. After the funeral, we held a small reception in the church hall, coffee urns steaming, paper plates bending under deviled eggs and cake. People spoke in gentle voices, as if too much sound might wake the dead, but I couldn't hear any of it. All I could hear was the echo of that ringtone, still pulsing in my head like a heartbeat out of sync. The phone sat inside my purse, turned off. I hadn't told anyone what the caller said, not even Matthew. "Please tell him I have the papers. Pastor said not to call today." The words looped again and again, each time twisting tighter around my thoughts. What papers? And why would someone be calling him on the day he was buried? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, a wrong number, a scammer, a moment of bad timing. But deep down, I knew better. When you live with someone for 40 years, you learn the weight of their secrets by the silences they leave behind. That night, after everyone left, I placed Daniel's suit back in the closet. The backup one I'd almost chosen for the funeral. As I straightened the hangers, my hand brushed against the back panel of the shelf. Something clicked. The board shifted slightly, like it had been pried loose once before. Behind it was a small wooden box. Smooth, heavy, unmarked. No lock this time, just a single strip of tape across the top. It looked old, worn, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. My chest tightened. I carried it to the kitchen table, sat under the yellow light that had seen every family dinner, and peeled back the tape. Inside were ordinary things. At first, a few old receipts, a hotel key card, a photo of a young woman with long brown hair, and a tiny silver bracelet engraved with one word: Noah. That was the moment I felt the first crack in the world I'd built around Daniel. Because Daniel and I never knew a Noah. We had no grandson by that name, no nephew, no friend's child. So why was there a baby bracelet? And why did it look so cared for? My fingers trembled as I lifted it, the cool metal pressing against my palm. It wasn't new. It had the faint scratches of time. He must have kept it hidden for years. I should have felt angry. But what I felt was something closer to fear. That same night, I turned the secret phone back on. It was half charged, the screen dim and cluttered with dust. No password, no name, just a list of recent calls. All to a single contact labeled Shepherd. The last text was from 2 days before Daniel died. "Don't send more. He'll find out. Meet at the usual place. I read it 3 times before realizing it wasn't his words. It was from someone else. Someone who knew the phone, who expected Daniel to be alive that week. The pit in my stomach deepened. I scrolled through the messages. Most were deleted, but a few fragments remained. Dates, short replies, and a string of names I didn't recognize. Mara, Noah, Pastor Cole, the carpenter. At midnight, I finally set the phone down. The house was silent, except for the old grandfather clock in the hall, ticking like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. Every shadow looked sharper, every creak of the wood heavier than it should have been. When I finally lay in bed, sleep didn't come. Just the memory of Daniel's voice, the one that had once been my comfort. Marge, promise me something. If anything ever happens to me, don't go through my things. I laughed when he said it, but now those words felt like a locked door I'd just kicked open. In the early morning, just before dawn, the phone buzzed once, a low vibration on the table beside me. No ring this time, just a single notification. Unknown number. He wasn't supposed to die yet. I sat up, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and terror. The message vanished seconds later, erased remotely before I could even react. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it, but when I checked again, the timestamp was still there. 3:47 a.m. The sound of the rain outside had stopped. The silence in the room was the kind that warns you something's coming. I looked over at Daniel's side of the bed, the pillow still indented where his head used to rest. I whispered into the dark, "What were you hiding from me?" There was no answer, only the faint, lonely click of the clock downstairs, marking the seconds until morning. And that's when I decided I had to know who Shepard was, because whoever they were, they knew Daniel. They knew Noah, and they knew he wasn't supposed to die. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of morning that smells like wet earth and unfinished business. I brewed a pot of coffee I never drank and stared at the secret phone. Its black screen reflected my face, pale, uncertain, older than I felt the day before. I told myself I should hand it to the police or to Matthew, but every part of me whispered no. Not yet, not until I understood what Daniel had been part of. By mid-morning, I had gathered enough courage to dial the last number in the phone's call log. Shepard. The line rang twice. Then a man answered. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Daniel." I froze. "No, this is his wife. Who is this?" A pause. Then softly, "You shouldn't have this phone, Mrs. Ellis." My throat tightened. "Who are you? What do you know about my husband?" Another silence. This one longer. Then a measured tone that sent chills through me. "He promised to finish what he started. I suppose that won't be possible now." Click. The line went dead. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. He knew Daniel was dead, and he wasn't surprised. That was the moment grief turned into fear. I decided to start with something simple. The hotel key card I'd found in Daniel's hidden box. The tag read, "Golden Elm Inn, room 203. It was only 30 minutes away. I told Matthew I needed to run errands, grabbed my coat, and drove through the misty back roads that Daniel used to love. Every bend of the highway felt like moving deeper into someone else's life. The Golden Elm Inn sat behind a row of oak trees, its sign faded, its parking lot half empty, the kind of place no one notices, which suddenly made it feel important. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and old carpet. I approached the front desk, pretending to be calm. "Hi, I'm checking about a lost item," I said. "My husband stayed here recently, Daniel Ellis." The clerk, a young man barely out of high school, typed for a moment, then frowned. "Ellis. Yeah, we had a Daniel Ellis, room 203, stayed 3 nights last month." My pulse quickened. Was he alone? He hesitated, glancing around. Mostly. Sometimes a woman visited. I don't think she checked in officially." I swallowed hard. What did she look like? Brown hair, mid-30s, always had a little boy with her, cute kid, blonde curls. That word hit me like a bell tolling from deep inside my chest. Noah. Did she leave a name? I asked, trying not to sound desperate. He shook his head. No, ma'am, but she forgot a bracelet once. The older guy, your husband, told me it was a family thing. Said he was helping her through something. Helping her. The words echoed strangely, twisting my fear into confusion. Was Daniel protecting her or protecting himself? Before leaving, I asked if they had any receipts or records left from his stay. The clerk looked around, then slid a folded invoice toward me. It listed cash payments only. Daniel never paid cash for anything. On the drive home, my thoughts spun faster than the tires. A woman, a child, a pastor, a secret phone, and papers that someone was desperate about. I pulled over halfway home just to breathe. Rain had started again, soft but insistent. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and whispered, "Daniel, what did you get yourself into?" That night, when the world was quiet again, I did something I shouldn't have. I went into his study. The room smelled of cedar and dust, untouched since before the funeral. His desk sat perfectly neat the way he always kept it. Every drawer slid open easily except one, the top right, the one he told me never to touch. I found the key in his Bible. Of course I did. Daniel always hid things where he thought God would guard them. Inside the drawer, I found a stack of envelopes, some sealed, some torn open, and one marked with a shaky hand, Mara K. Confidential. The name matched one of the texts from the phone. Inside the envelope were photocopies of birth records, handwritten letters, and a faded photograph of a teenage girl holding a baby. The note on the back read, Mara and Noah, 2004. My chest tightened. If Daniel had been having an affair, it wasn't recent. It was decades old, or... No, that didn't make sense. He was with me all those years. I flipped through the letters again and noticed something odd. They were written by Daniel. Mara, I'm doing everything I can. The pastor has the papers now. Don't talk to him alone. You'll be safe soon. I promise Marjorie will understand when the time comes. My name. He mentioned me. The paper slipped from my hands. My vision blurred. This wasn't about another woman stealing my husband. This was about something Daniel was trying to protect me from. And yet, who was Mara? And what did the pastor have to do with her? With us? Before I could piece it together, my phone buzzed. The secret one, again. Unknown number. Stop digging, Mrs. Ellis. Shepard doesn't forgive trespass. The message deleted itself seconds later. I sat frozen in Daniel's chair, surrounded by the scent of cedar and dust, listening to the house creak in warning. I finally understood something simple but terrifying. Whatever Daniel had been part of, it hadn't died with him. For the next few days, I lived like a ghost inside my own home. The air felt heavier, the walls thinner. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a footstep that shouldn't be there. I kept Daniel's phone turned off, hidden beneath a dish towel in the kitchen drawer, as if a folded piece of fabric could protect me from the truth. But the truth doesn't stay quiet. It knocks until you answer. The morning after the threatening text, I found something strange on our porch. A plain white envelope, no address, no stamp. Inside, a single photograph. Daniel. Standing in front of a small white church I didn't recognize. Beside him, the same woman from the photo labeled Mara. She looked older now, maybe mid-30s, and she was holding a little boy with curly blonde hair, Noah. On the back of the photo, in neat handwriting, he didn't keep his promise. I remember the way my knees almost gave out. I had to lean against the railing, breathing through the ache in my chest that felt too big for my ribs. Was Daniel helping them? Or hiding them? Or worse? Was someone trying to make me believe something that wasn't true? That afternoon, the whispers began. At the grocery store, I caught Mrs. Parker from our church turning away when she saw me. At the pharmacy, 2 women pretended to study greeting cards while murmuring my name. When I reached for a box of tissues, one of them finally said it aloud, soft but sharp as glass. "Did you hear? Daniel Ellis had a whole other family?" I wanted to shout no, that's not true, but even I didn't know if it was. I left the cart behind and walked home in the rain. The drops hit hard, cold, like the world was trying to wash something off me I didn't yet understand. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, the first in months, and sat at Daniel's desk again. This time, I didn't search for answers. I waited for them to find me, and they did. At 9:12 p.m., the house phone rang. Not the secret one, the home phone, the one that hadn't rung in days. I hesitated before picking up. "Hello?" A woman's voice, shaky, tired. "Mrs. Ellis. Yes, you don't know me, but I knew your husband. My name is Mara." My heart stopped. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then quietly, "You were the one who called during the funeral." A long silence. "I'm sorry. I didn't know he was gone. I didn't mean to." Her voice cracked, and something about it, the ache, the guilt, didn't sound like a mistress. It sounded like someone lost. "What were you to my husband, Mara?" "He was helping me. He said he owed me that much." "Owed you?" "He promised to fix what happened when I was born." Her words hit like lightning. When I was born. Not when my child was born. Her. Before I could ask more, the line went dead. I spent the rest of that night pacing. Old memories clawed their way back. A hospital in the early 1980s, a crying baby I wasn't allowed to hold, a nurse's voice saying, "You're too young, it's better this way." No, that couldn't be connected. It had been buried decades ago, sealed, forgotten. But then again, Daniel had been there. He was the only one who knew. I pressed my hands to my face, shaking. Could it be? Was Mara that baby? The next day, a call came from Daniel's lawyer, Mr. Harland. He asked if I could stop by the office. Said there was something Daniel left for me. When I arrived, the rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Mr. Harland was a kind man, always had been. He offered me tea, which I didn't take, and then pulled a small envelope from his desk drawer. "Daniel instructed me to give this to you only after his funeral," he said. "And one other thing. There's a key." He slid both items across the desk, a brass key with the number 412, and a sealed letter with my name written in his familiar hand. "What's the key for?" I asked. "He said you'd know when the time was right." I didn't, but I thanked him anyway and left, feeling the letter burn like a live coal in my pocket. When I got home, I couldn't bring myself to open it yet. I placed it beside Daniel's wedding ring on the mantel. Some truths, I thought, deserved to wait for their moment. That night, around midnight, headlights swept across the living room curtains. A car idled outside for a full minute before driving away. When I stepped out, the only thing left on the porch was another white envelope. Inside, a storage unit receipt, unit number 412. The same number as the key, and a note written in shaky pen. "He was trying to save you both. Don't let them take it." The edges of the note were damp, like it had been written in haste or tears. I stared at it until the words blurred. Whatever Daniel had done, whoever they were, it wasn't just about infidelity or hidden money. It was bigger, darker, and somehow it all led back to me. I looked toward the mantel where Daniel's letter sat waiting. The candlelight flickered against the envelope as if daring me to open it. I whispered, "Not yet." Because I already knew, the moment I read that letter, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I didn't sleep that night. The letter from Daniel sat on the mantel, untouched, but it felt alive, as if it was watching me. Every creak of the house sounded like his voice asking me not to open it. Not yet. By dawn, I couldn't bear it anymore. I grabbed my coat, slipped the small brass key into my pocket, and drove to the storage address from the envelope. The streets were empty, wet with morning fog. It felt like I was driving straight into a secret my husband had left behind. The storage place was quiet. Rows of gray doors, silver dew clinging to the locks. The clerk recognized Daniel's name immediately. "He was in here a lot," she said softly. "Always polite, paid cash." She gave me directions to Unit 412. The lock turned easily. The door rolled open with a tired groan. Inside were 3 boxes, a small safe, and a black suitcase. Everything lined up neatly like Daniel had packed them with care. The first box held receipts and papers. Cash withdrawals, hotel slips from the Golden Elm Inn, notes in Daniel's handwriting, all paid in cash. The second box stopped me cold. Inside were copies of hospital records from St. Helen's Home for Mothers. I hadn't seen that name in 40 years. It was the place I was taken to as a pregnant teenager, the place where I was told I wasn't ready to be a mother, the place where I signed my name on papers that made me feel like I'd died and kept breathing. My fingers shook as I pulled out the next folder. Photos spilled across the floor. One showed Daniel with a woman, the same woman from the photo labeled Mara. She looked like me, only younger. She held a little boy with blonde curls. On the back, Daniel had written, "Mara and Noah. Safe for now." It felt like the air left the room. Safe for now? From what? The third box had a small notebook with one word pressed into the cover: Carpenter. I opened it and saw Daniel's handwriting. He'd been tracking someone, Pastor Cole Avery, notes about forged papers, adoptions, blackmail. Each entry felt heavier than the last. Then I found one sentence that made me stop breathing. "If I fail, tell Marge the truth kindly. She has carried enough." The room spun. I knelt down by the safe. My hands knew the combination before my head did, 1982, the year I gave birth. The latch clicked open. Inside was a thick manila folder labeled "For Marge, open when safe." The first page said, "Surrender of parental rights. St. Helen's Home for Mothers." My maiden name, Marjorie Whitcomb, was typed at the top. The next page was a hospital ledger with one line circled in red: "Baby girl W, discharged to C. Avery, Cole Avery." My breath caught. A birth certificate followed, but the space for mother was blank. Instead, it bore Pastor Cole's signature, under the false pretense of guardian. There was even a check from Cole Avery Ministries with Daniel's handwriting scrawled across it: extortion. At the back of the folder was a small Polaroid, a newborn's feet tagged BGW82. Clipped to it was Daniel's note: "If you found this, forgive me later." I tried to bring home what they stole. I pressed the photo to my chest and cried. Not the loud kind of crying, the silent kind that cracks you from the inside out. Then the phone rang. Not the house phone, the secret one. I answered. "Hello?" A whisper. "Mrs. Ellis? Mara? Don't say my name," she said. "They're watching me. He said if something happened to him, you'd know what to do. Do you?" I looked at the papers spread in front of me. "I think I do." She was crying softly. "The name you remember isn't the name they used," she said. "He told me to tell you that. They changed everything." "What name?" I asked. "Mara. What name did they give you?" Before she could answer, a man's voice shouted in the background, "Get off the phone!" The line went dead. I sat frozen for a long time, listening to the rain against the roof. When I finally stood, my legs felt hollow. I drove home and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter Daniel had left me. My hands were shaking as I opened it. "My dearest Marge, if you're reading this, I failed to finish what I began for you. You've heard her name by now, Mara, and seen the bracelet with Noah's. I didn't betray you. I was keeping a promise I made 43 years ago when a frightened girl signed a paper she didn't understand. My vision blurred. The man who calls himself Pastor Cole, is not a pastor. He took what was ours. I found her, Marge. I found our daughter. I was trying to bring her home. I pressed the pages against my heart and whispered Daniel's name over and over until it didn't sound real anymore. Then came a knock on the door, 3 hard knocks. I froze. Through the window, I could see a tall figure standing on the porch, rain dripping off his coat. "Mrs. Ellis," a man's voice called, smooth and deliberate. "This is Pastor Cole. May I come in?" The room went still. Every hair on my neck rose. Daniel's words echoed in my mind. He is not a pastor. I didn't move. I just stood there in the quiet, holding the letter like a shield, and waited for the next knock. Rain dripped from the roof as the knock came again. Louder this time. "Mrs. Ellis," the voice repeated, calm and patient. "I just want to talk." My fingers gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. The letter from Daniel was still in my other hand, its paper trembling with my heartbeat. I didn't answer. He knocked once more. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said. "I know about Daniel. I know what he was trying to do." The air in the room changed. He knew. I stepped slowly toward the front door and stopped just behind it. "Who are you?" I called through the wood. He chuckled, low and smooth. "You already know." My stomach turned. I pulled the curtain aside just enough to see him. A man in his 50s, tall, perfectly groomed, holding a black umbrella. His smile was too kind to be honest. "Pastor Cole," I whispered. He looked directly at the window as if he could hear my thoughts. "Please, Mrs. Ellis," he said. "It's raining. Let me in." I came to finish what Daniel started. I almost opened the door. Almost. His tone carried that practiced warmth I remembered from every sermon like his I'd ever heard. It was the voice of authority pretending to be mercy. I said, "You need to leave." His smile thinned. Daniel owed me something. He didn't deliver. That sentence landed like a stone in my gut. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Yes, you do." He leaned closer to the door. "He kept the papers. Those belong to us." The papers. The word twisted everything back into focus. The adoption forms, the ledger, the birth certificate. "I'm calling the police," I said. He didn't sound worried. "They can't help you, Mrs. Ellis. Those documents are sealed by the court. If you hand them over, no one ever has to know what you did in 1982. My breath hitched. He knew. "You were a child," he said softly, almost kindly. "We gave that baby a proper life. But Daniel didn't want to let go. You know how stubborn he was." The world tilted. I pressed my forehead against the door. He went on, his voice lowering. "Mara came looking for him last year. She wanted answers. She doesn't understand the past like we do, and now she's frightened because she's been talking to people who want to destroy good work." "Good work?" I snapped before I could stop myself. "You stole children from their mothers." The smile vanished. His next words came sharp and measured. "Careful, Marjorie. You're not as invisible as you think." Something in his tone made the air go cold. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. He sighed. "Daniel was a good man. He tried to protect you. But his death has left things untidy. I can help you clean them up. Just give me what's mine." I looked at the envelope on the table, the folder from the safe still open, the edges curling slightly from my hands. Every instinct screamed, "Don't." "Leave my property," I said, voice shaking. He tapped once on the door, soft, almost playful. "You still don't understand, do you? Mara isn't who you think she is." That froze me. "What?" He smiled again, and for the first time his kindness looked like a weapon. "Daniel didn't tell you the whole story. The girl he met last year wasn't your daughter. It was her daughter. The child you lost had a child of her own. Noah is your grandson." My knees almost gave out. He tilted his head. "So you see why I'm here. There are generations at stake. The boys' records, the adoption links, they all lead back to you. One scandal and the church loses everything. The thunder outside rolled through the sky like something angry at the truth. I whispered, "You're lying." He smiled wider. If I were, Daniel would still be alive. I stepped back, clutching Daniel's letter like a lifeline. His last words flashed in my mind. Protect the boy first, Noah. The man outside shifted, realizing I wouldn't open the door. I'll come back, he said quietly. But next time, I won't knock. Then he turned and walked into the rain. I waited until his car's taillights disappeared down the street before I moved. My whole body trembled, every part of me trying to hold back the truth, clawing its way to the surface. I went to the kitchen table, picked up the photo of Mara holding the little boy, and studied her face. The eyes, her eyes, looked familiar. Not because she looked like Daniel, because she looked like me. It all fell into place at once. Mara wasn't my husband's lover. She wasn't some stranger he pitied. She was the baby I lost, and the boy in her arms, my grandson. Daniel hadn't been cheating. He'd been fighting to bring our family back together, quietly, carefully, while trying to protect me from the shame and the man who started it all. I sank to my knees and cried, for Daniel, for Mara, for the girl I used to be, and for the decades stolen by one man's greed. When the tears finally stopped, I looked at the rain running down the window. The glass blurred the world outside, but I could still see the faint outline of a figure standing under the streetlight, watching. I knew without seeing his face. Pastor Cole wasn't gone. He was waiting. And somewhere out there, my daughter, my Mara, was in danger. The next morning, I woke with one thought repeating in my mind. He's not going to win. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of it. The streets outside were quiet, washed clean. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photo of Mara and the little boy, and I knew what Daniel had been trying to do. He hadn't died running from guilt. He'd died trying to protect us. I didn't know how deep Pastor Cole's power went, or who they were that he kept mentioning. But I knew one thing. Men like him survive because women like me stay quiet. And I'd been quiet my entire life. Not anymore. I gathered everything Daniel had left. The files, the notes, the forged certificates, the photos, and placed them in a cloth grocery bag. Then I opened my phone and called the one person Daniel had trusted other than me, Mr. Harland, his lawyer. He answered on the second ring. "Marjorie, I've been expecting your call." My voice shook. "You knew?" "Not everything," he said carefully, "but enough to know Daniel was in danger. He told me if anything happened, to help you finish it." "Finish what?" "To expose Cole Avery and to protect the girl named Mara." That was all I needed to hear. When I arrived at Harlan's office, he was waiting with a small recording device and a black folder. His office smelled of leather and old paper. "I can take this to the authorities," he said, "but if he has influence in the church or the county, it might disappear. We need public light, not quiet justice." I nodded slowly. "Then let's make it public." He leaned back. "That takes courage, Mrs. Ellis. Once this is out, your name will be too." I looked down at my hands, lined, freckled, trembling but steady. My name's been buried in lies long enough. We planned everything in hushed voices. Harland would contact a journalist he trusted, a woman who'd covered similar cases years ago. I'd bring the documents, the letter, and whatever I could prove from Daniel's notes. But there was one problem. We needed Mara. Her testimony would make it undeniable. I tried calling her again. No answer. Straight to voicemail. A sick fear settled in my chest. "Find her," Harland said firmly, "before he does." That night, I drove to the old church from the photographs, the white one with the cracked bell tower. It was nearly midnight. The parking lot was empty except for one car, a dark sedan I recognized instantly. Pastor Cole's. My palms were sweating as I stepped out. The church door was unlocked, and the moment I pushed it open, the scent of candle wax and dust filled the air. A faint light flickered from the altar. "Mara?" I called softly. No answer. I took a few steps forward, shoes echoing on the wooden floor, and then, from the shadows near the front, his voice came. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Ellis." He stepped out, hands clasped behind his back, calm as ever. His coat was gone, sleeves rolled neatly. He looked more like a businessman than a pastor. "I want my daughter," I said. He smiled thinly. "You mean my parishioner?" "Where is she?" He tilted his head. "You really think she wants to see the woman who abandoned her?" My throat tightened. "I was 17. I didn't abandon her. You stole her." His eyes narrowed. "Watch your words. Everything that happened back then was legal, sanctified, signed by you. You forged my consent." He stepped closer, voice low. "Prove it." "I can," I said, lifting the bag of documents. "And when I do, you're finished." For a second, the mask slipped. A flash of irritation crossed his face. Then he laughed quietly. "You really think anyone will believe an old widow with a history of grief over a man of God?" Something inside me snapped, not with rage, but with clarity. "Yes," I said, "because I'm not the only one you hurt, and this time, none of us are staying silent." Behind me, a door creaked. I turned, and there she was. Mara stood in the back aisle, holding little Noah's hand. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. When she saw me, she froze, unsure if she should run or stay. Cole's tone softened instantly. "Mara." "Sweetheart, come here. You don't need to be afraid. Mrs. Ellis is confused." But Mara didn't move. She looked at me, not him. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen since I was 17. My own fear, my own strength, both at once. I took a slow breath. "Mara," I said gently, "I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want you to know the truth about who he really is." Cole snapped. "Enough!" He lunged toward me, but Mara stepped between us, holding up her phone. "Don't touch her," she said. Her voice was shaking but clear. "I called the reporter Dad told me about. She's listening." His face went pale. "You think you can ruin me with lies?" he hissed. Mara's hand trembled, but she didn't back down. "They're not lies. You took girls, sold babies, and called it salvation. My father tried to stop you, and you killed him for it." He froze. Even saying it aloud made the room different, heavier. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of truth. I whispered, "You killed him?" Cole's jaw tightened. He wouldn't stop interfering. He should have left it buried. For a second, I thought he might hit her. Instead, he turned and stormed out through the side door. The sound of his car starting shattered the silence. Mara's knees gave out, and I caught her before she fell. We stayed like that for a long time. Two women bound by a story neither chose, finally standing in the same truth. She whispered, "He said you didn't want me." I held her tighter. He lied. The next morning, the story broke. Harlan's contact, a local reporter named Eva, released everything. Daniel's letters, Cole's forged documents, the testimonies from other women Daniel had tracked down. Within hours, news vans lined the church parking lot. By evening, Cole Avery was in custody. They found financial records, adoption files, proof of payments, years of deceit dressed as ministry. When the cameras left and the headlines faded, I sat with Mara and Noah on my porch. The little boy was chasing fireflies, his laughter ringing like something the world hadn't heard in too long. Mara looked at me carefully. "You don't hate me?" I smiled through tears. "How could I? You're the only piece of me I ever missed." She reached for my hand. "He said you'd be ashamed." "I was," I said softly, "but not of you, of what I let them do to us. Daniel spent his life fixing what I was too scared to face. Now it's our turn to live it right." The sun dipped below the trees, painting the yard gold. For the first time in days, I felt peace, fragile, trembling, but real. That night, I sat alone with Daniel's last letter one more time. His words blurred in the lamplight, but one line stayed clear. "Forgive me for keeping the truth too long. I only wanted to spare you pain." I whispered into the quiet, "You didn't fail, Daniel. You brought us home." Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees, and somewhere in that sound, I could almost hear him hum, that low, steady tune he used to make when he thought no one was listening. The days that followed felt like waking from a long, dark dream. For weeks, the house had been filled with silence and ghosts. Now it carried new sounds, laughter, footsteps, the soft creak of the back door opening in the mornings. Mara and Noah had moved into the guest room, just for a little while, but I didn't have the heart to ask them to leave. I didn't want them to. Sometimes I would find Noah sitting on the porch swing, humming a tune Daniel used to hum when he was fixing the fence. He had Daniel's patience, his curious hands. He'd ask questions about the stars, about life, about the grandfather he never got to meet. I would smile and answer as best I could, each word softening a part of me I thought would stay broken forever. The town was still buzzing about Pastor Cole's arrest. The papers called it the St. Helens scandal, and every few days another survivor came forward, women like me, women who'd been silenced for decades. Mara and I watched every update together, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just sitting in silence. Justice was slow, but it was coming. One morning, a letter arrived from Harland. Inside was a short note written in his steady script. "Daniel's case is closed. His name is clear. The state has recognized him as a cooperating witness. The truth stands." I read it aloud, and Mara smiled through her tears. "He did it, didn't he? He really did." I nodded. He never stopped trying to make it right. We decided to visit his grave that afternoon. The cemetery was quiet, sunlight falling in soft gold between the trees. We brought wildflowers from the garden, daisies and marigolds, the ones he used to plant along the fence. Noah placed a single flower on the stone and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa." I knelt beside him and traced Daniel's name with my fingers. "You brought us back together," I whispered, "even when the world tried to keep us apart." The wind stirred, gentle, carrying the faint scent of rain and earth. I closed my eyes and let the moment hold me. That evening, as the sun set, Mara and I sat on the porch swing. She leaned her head against my shoulder. The air was still warm, but it carried the first hint of autumn. "Do you ever wish it had happened differently?" she asked softly. I thought for a long time before answering. "Every day," I said, "but if it had, I might never have found you again. Maybe the hardest roads are the only ones that lead home." She smiled faintly. "He used to say things like that, too." "Daniel," she nodded. "He'd tell me that the truth always costs something, but lies cost more in the end." I smiled, tears gathering again. He was right. He always was. We sat there until the porch light flickered on, and Noah's laughter floated through the open window. The world, once so heavy, felt lighter now. I looked at Mara, my daughter, and realized that love can survive even the deepest betrayal, that family can grow again from ashes if you're brave enough to tell the truth. For years, I had been a woman defined by what was taken from me. Now, I was defined by what I'd reclaimed. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I took out Daniel's wedding ring, the one I'd kept by the mantel. I slipped it into my palm and stood by the window. The moonlight fell across the table, touching the photos we'd framed. One of Daniel smiling in the garden, one of Mara holding Noah. 3 generations of stories, finally together. I whispered into the quiet, "We're okay now. You can rest." A breeze moved through the open window, cool and light, carrying with it the faintest scent of wildflowers. And for just a moment, I could almost feel Daniel's hand on my shoulder. Steady, reassuring, the way it always had been. The past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer owned me. I looked out at the yard where Noah's toy car still sat in the grass and smiled. There was peace in the small things now, the sound of wind through the trees, the creak of the porch swing, the warmth of a home filled with truth instead of secrets. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was living inside someone else's story. This one was ours, and it was finally complete. And that, my friends, is how truth finally found its way home. It took loss, betrayal, and 40 years of silence. But love was louder in the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, have you ever witnessed something like this in real life? I'd love to read your stories below, and remember, some secrets are meant to break, because only when they do can light finally get in.